was really pivotal of learning to love myself and learning to going into forgiveness towards my biological mother was huge, because I thought I was forgiving her for her, you know? But actually, when I actually said those words, I forgive you, it was for me.
Hello and warm welcome to the Stories We Tell. I'm Nithya Shanti, a teacher and facilitator of conscious living here at Roundglass. On this show, we share the gift of illuminating stories. Each week, you'll hear a true story from me and a special guest on a universal theme. Stories of self-acceptance, overcoming inconceivable odds, embracing change, and recognizing our limitless nature while honoring our humanity. Today's theme is changing our perspective through service to others. A lot of times we can get caught up in our own struggles, and sometimes it is only by seeing the struggles of others that we can understand our own path. The first time I discovered this was when I had done 2 or 3 meditation courses, and I found meditation to be incredibly hard because not only would my mind wander so much, many difficult emotions came up and my body would hurt. And yet, deep down, I felt there's something really valuable in this path, really valuable in this practice. It was like I was really struggling with myself. It felt like a really complicated puzzle I didn't know how to solve. And it's only after doing my 3rd meditation course where I happened to go for a retreat and they requested me, would you mind not attending the retreat as a participant and instead helping serve, because we are short on people who are serving. So I agreed. And I was meditating less because I had a lot of duties in the day, taking care of things and supporting people. However, whenever I did meditate, my meditation was much deeper. And that's the first time I realized there's some kind of a link between serving others and meditation. Until then, for me, they were two totally separate things. But that was the day I first recognized that. And in that course, focusing on not only my own struggles, but helping others with their struggles, being there for them and supporting them. And in a way, the heart of compassion arose, the heart of how can I be of service arose. And my struggle seemed small, or at least in perspective. So since then, I would have to say my meditation practice dramatically improved. And the answer came from such an unexpected source. I always thought before that I have to change something in my attitude, or have to change, I'm not practicing right, I haven't understood something right. But actually it was when I opened my heart and I thought of how I can help others. So even though serving others can seem like an outer activity, it's actually a mirror-like activity. It's showing us constantly our own face. That's what I learned from that experience. Remember when I was 7 or 8 years old, I asked myself, what's the purpose of my life? And in my case, I got the answer pretty quickly. The answer just came quite spontaneously. The answer came, I want to be happy. Purpose of my life is to be happy. And then a secondary answer came, the purpose of my life is to spread happiness. And for the longest time, I saw these as 2 separate things. First, I will be happy, then I will spread happiness. But over the years, I realized they're completely intertwined. And this is the element of wisdom and compassion. Wisdom is discovering what is the path to true happiness, what is the way of being that leads to true happiness. And compassion is recognizing that we cannot have that true happiness as long as we assume we are separate from others. So that's been my journey, and wanted to share a few of the struggles and the learnings along the way. We are now honored to speak with meditation teacher, author and speaker Vimalasara. Vimalasara grew up in an orphanage in Britain and developed out of necessity meditation techniques as a child. This was a way to cope with harsh punishments, like being forced to face the wall with hands above her head for long periods of time. Also, she was incarcerated as a young adult, and she had to spend countless hours in solitary confinement. Vimalasara later became the author of several books, but it was a trip to India for her ordination as a Buddhist that provided the inspiration for her book, broken voices, and a shift in her perspective. Vimalasara, very warm welcome.
Thank you. It was lovely listening to you and just reflecting on happiness. And the first place I found happiness, I was incarcerated as a kid, not a young adult. I was 15. And in that solitary confinement, I found happiness. And I think it's something about that stillness, simplicity, and contentment. Actually, I would say it was a great experience for me because I went into altered states. I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but I know it was a happy place. There was something about that experience which I knew I wanted to meditate. I experienced yoga in there, but I knew when I came out of incarceration at the age of 17 and a half, I was ready to change my life. And what I would say is that, you know, kids who end up incarcerated at such a young age, it's that something's gone on in their childhood conditioning. I tried to use education as the answer, and education didn't make me happy. So I came out and ended up going to university. And actually it was really interesting at university. I had a bet with a friend that none of us could join a group. You know, we couldn't join a political group, we couldn't join a religious group. And I had let go of religion when I was 19, when I went to Jerusalem and did the kibbutz, and I let go. And so for me, somewhere I was looking for something, and I found Buddhism. And at the age of 35, I can't remember now. I'm getting old now. But anyway, I think in my late 30s, early 40s, I went to India. That was my third time in India. And I was ordained in Baja, at the Baja Caves. And part of that was doing pilgrimage. And on that pilgrimage, I came across Dr. Ambedkar. And I was still, you know, in my late 30s and early 40s, I was still struggling with my past, still coming to terms with my past and still looking for happiness. I'd let go of drugs, etc., and alcohol, and I was still looking for happiness. So that was me going to India. And when I came across Dr. Ambedkar, it was like, how comes the world doesn't know about Dr. Ambedkar? But one of his teachings that really was so poignant for me was this teaching where he said that all caste was a state of mind. It was a notion of mind, and therefore you needed a religion to emancipate the mind. And you know, for him, you know, as you know, you'll be familiar with Dr. Ambedkar. He was born into the untouchable caste, and so for somebody to be born into that caste and just to be able to say all it is a state of mind blew my mind apart. And as I was reading that, it was like I was reading all color is a state of mind. And actually you need something to emancipate the mind. And so, of course, as we know, he did this mass conversion to Buddhism in 1956 on October the 14th. And so during that trip, when I was ordained into the Buddhist tradition, I traveled to some villages and heard the stories of some of the women. And I was writing books. I used to be a journalist, but I was writing books, and I was just asked, because I was so interested in the women's lives, I was asked, could I write their stories? Could I help them to write their stories? Because they realized that it was too dangerous for them to write their stories. And so for me, it was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll come back and do that, you know. So I went back to England and I raised the money. I managed to get some funding. I didn't look for being paid. It was just very altruistic. I didn't want any money for it. Any money, all the proceeds of the book went to the women. But it was going back to India. I think I must have spent 6 or 7 months in India, traveling from village to village and hearing the lives of these women. And I just say, I was just actually I wrote this book in 2008, and some of the things that I wrote about was like the universal nature of caste, looking at outcasts, happy and discontented with the gods, the rise and fall of Hindu women. But, traveling from village to village and hearing these stories, Nithya, I came back to England with less complaint. I came back happier, basically. I came back happier. There was just something that shifted in me. It was like, you know what? My life really is okay. I'm not saying that things didn't happen to me, and I'm not saying that I didn't have a harsh childhood conditioning. And the woman I can be a non-binary woman in this world. I can be a woman who doesn't have to be dependent on men for my money. I can be a single woman. I can walk out on the streets and have some freedom. Okay? And when you hear the lives of some of these stories and what these women have to put up with, and not even, if they come from that Dalit caste and living in the villages and not being able to drink from the same well as people in a higher caste from them. So I just came back to England when I was living in England so much happier. Something shifted for me, and maybe that's what put me on the path of really wanting to be a teacher and to share happiness and to share a way out of my suffering. And because definitely I have transformed my life, and that experience was really part of my transformation and part of my way out of struggle, part of my way out of suffering.
Amazing. I like how you mentioned that you expected to get transformed at retreat, but it happened through Dr. Ambedkar's work and the time that you spent with these women.
Yeah, most definitely. You're going on this long retreat, and I'm being ordained into a Buddhist lineage, and and I'm hoping for this big aha moment. You're there meditating, but it happened really through Dr. Ambedkar. Yeah, he was a visionary.
Yeah. What I relate to that is that perhaps all of us have a mental model of what transformation is about. Just like I shared in my story that, I thought it's about meditating correctly and meditating better. And then I realized that no, it was just actually helping other people. And that's where the shift happened. So it's so interesting how maybe it's good for all of us to reflect that, whatever our mental idea is of what it would take to be a better person, live a better life, it's not necessarily so. We should perhaps be more open-minded and open-hearted.
And how to find happiness is serving others, serving others, dedicating your life to others. I get so much happiness when I'm able to give and nobody knows that I'm giving. Why keep all this wealth to yourself? Is that going to make you happy when somebody else is struggling? My emancipation is tied up in your emancipation. How can I be completely free when people around me aren't free? Really, for me, I see it that life is about service. It's about service, even to the point of me. I'm somebody who I like to move fast, and being of service is actually moving slower because the person in front of me might not be able to move as fast. It really is about service. It's, we can't take anything with us when we die.
It's nice for me to discuss Dr. Ambedkar with you because in India, as you're aware, these things have become very political. The whole Dalit movement has become a big section of voters for politicians. And at one level, it was all about coming out of the identity, but now it's become yet another identity. And I personally somewhat resisted the teachings of Dr. Ambedkar because I felt that I connected in my mind to this whole big political movement that's happened and this whole further identification. And I said that, the Buddha's teachings are about coming out of identity. But now listening to you, I'm realizing that his intent was very compassionate and his intent was really to empower all of these people. And that was the best way he knew to really help them emancipate their minds and get them out of the limitation. And the fact that he had such a huge impact in his lifetime and since then. So I can really see his bodhisattva work in that, in a way that nothing else would have really done. So it's beautiful to discuss this with you. One of the shortest stories I know, which I find really powerful, is the student comes to the master and he says, "I'm discouraged. I'm completely discouraged." And the master's quiet for a while. And the student says, "Tell me, what should I do? I'm so discouraged." And the master looks at him and says, "Encourage others." And so it's like you're saying that what we are looking for ourselves is what we need to give. It's such a strange paradox that in my case, I was seeking happiness, but the seeking happiness, no matter how much I kept seeking, even in meditation, spirituality, ultimately it came through spreading happiness. It's like a really strange, and for me, the other day I had a dream in which I was in a very complicated situation. And instead of resisting it and fighting it, I kind of got really still in the dream. And I said, this is like a puzzle. This situation is like a puzzle. And I'm not going to get out of this puzzle by struggling and by resisting. I'm only going to get out of this puzzle, I'm going to find a solution by getting really quiet. So I want to ask you that you've been through many such puzzles in your life, whether it's getting incarcerated as a child or whether it is the challenges you faced with finding your identity, finding a teaching that resonated with you, and of course so many race challenges that you've had in your life. So what are some of the pointers you can give our audience that when they find themselves in a situation that just seems there's just no way out, what might help?
It reminds me of that aphorism, the way out is the way through, isn't it? It's coming back to that teaching, encourage others. You have to face that by encouraging others. What I would say is what comes to me is Eckhart Tolle with the power of now. And when I think of that, nothing happens in the past, really, does it? Nothing happens in the future. It only happens in the now. And so I would say that really it is possible to get to the point of so what? So what happened in your past? So what? And so what I would be saying to people is to become aware of your stories. We have our hot favorite stories, and be aware of how these stories keep us trapped. And these stories exist in the mind. They don't exist anywhere else. It's to really be aware of the stories. To me, I think it's so tragic when there are people in their 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and they're still angry with their parents and their parents have died. The parents have died and you're still angry with them. Yeah? And who are you harming? They've gone. So they're not even, it's not like you can even shout or scream at them. They can't even feel your anger. They can't even hear your anger. And yet, carrying this burden of anger is just weighing you down. Let go of it. Imagine that if your parents are gone and you're still really angry, imagine carrying a hot piece of coal. And that's what it is, because it's just burning you inside and outside. And what I would say is it's to love yourself, really, to love yourself. I think to say I love you, I hear you, I breathe with you, I forgive you, I release you, and begin to release some of these old stories because they just cause harm. And again, you might want to ask yourself, how useful is this story? What's this story doing for you? And you might find that this story is protecting you from the hurt and the pain. So thank it. It's okay. You've protected me. You've kept me safe. But I don't need you anymore. I can retire you. Yeah? Because these stories, the reason why we hold on to them, there's a function. There's a reason why we hold on to them. And we've been holding on to them far too long that it causes us misery. There's a great teaching that the Buddha gives. It's the raft, You take the raft as far as it will carry you. So if you needed to cross a stretch of water, but it was too much, you couldn't swim, and you couldn't wade through, and you found a raft or a boat, you'd get in it and you'd row across to the other side, and you would leave it there. You wouldn't pick it up and try and carry it. You just leave it because you don't need it anymore. And this is what we need to do with our stories, realizing we don't need these stories anymore.
How would you recommend to someone who's inspired by your message and recognizes that, yes, serving others, altruism, this is a really important aspect of their life? How can people get started?
How people can get started is beginning to help themselves. When we help ourselves, we help others. I always say that. Again, it comes back to what your teacher said. He said to you, there's agitation in your voice. You're not going to get far with these kids when they hear this agitation in your voice. You need to be able to come from a place of peace. So that's what they hear, and that's what's going to impact people. So, it's not like being of service, you've got to write a book or you've got to start a movement. Being of service is helping yourself. Some people will test us. Some people will challenge us because some people don't want you to change. Yeah, they don't want you. They want to try and sabotage that, but you'll get through that. So that's what I say is we begin with ourselves. That's where it begins.
Since your experience in India and writing this book, Broken Voices, when after that have you again had to really revisit your understanding of life and these principles? And what have been the other pivotal moments since that book that have really made you reevaluate how you look at things and maybe come to a deeper place of understanding?
I think a pivotal moment was just recently. I did a meditation retreat with just me and all the voices in my head, Mara, and call Mara, coming up against these mental states. And in that, I could really see that there was somewhere that I had lost my way. It's so easy to go for refuge to institutions and rather to people. But I think for me, what it was like the struggle that I don't need to keep on struggling with certain things. I can just accept. And in that acceptance, the struggle just falls away. So I just say quite recently, I would say you spoke about being on retreat, going on retreat and being asked to serve. And that made me think of the Goenka retreats. I sat several Goenka retreats, and definitely that was a pivotal moment in my life, a real pivotal moment doing those 10-day silent retreats. I would say that Thich Nhat Hanh has been very pivotal. I struggled with coming into relationship with a mother who was taken to court for the things that she did to me. I was taken out of the orphanage at the age of 11 and put back into the orphanage at the age of 12 and a half. She was taken to court. And then I've never known my father, and I struggled with that, especially, it's like you must love your parents. You got to love your parents. If you think of the Metta Sutta, it's all about the parents. You got to love your parents. It's like, hey, it's not as simple as that, And I remember asking this question of Thich Nhat Hanh, the late Thich Nhat Hanh, and I remember him, looking me in the eye and just saying, you have such a strong presence. You have such a strong voice. Your parents are in you. And I couldn't avoid that I have their part of their DNA that mixes, and that is who I am. And just to be grateful for that. So for me, that was really pivotal of learning to love myself and learning to going into forgiveness towards my biological mother was huge, because I thought I was forgiving her for her, but actually when I actually said those words, I forgive you, it was for me, completely freed me up. And she's in that situation. The two of her children, me and my youngest sister, we were secrets, so people didn't know about us, and then people got to know about us, is another story. And now she's gone into her old age, so she doesn't want to know about us two. And I'm perfectly fine with that, really. And when I think of her, I wish her well. So much easier than wishing her ill will. I mean, that, to wish, that's to wish people ill will it's a cancer. And I totally understand how people can get to that point. And how do we get to that point of being able to transform that and move into forgiveness? It's a journey. And I would say for me, it was doing the practice of loving kindness. I had to do it. Loving kindness, learning to love myself, putting myself in all 5 stages, the stage of, with myself, the stage of the friend, the stage of the neutral person, the stage of the enemy, and into the world. I had to do that for a few years. I had to, again, we're coming back to, it begins with oneself. Every day can be a pivotal moment. When I see people living on the streets, I think that could be me, or that person could be sitting next to me. They are my teachers. Every single day could be a pivotal day if I was open to what was or what is happening around me. And then I would say, really, loosening that identification to this self. We can have such a strong identification to black, to female, to non-binary, to journalist, to writer, to victim, I can remember, it's like, I'm no longer a victim. I'm no longer a survivor. I'm a liver, but just letting go of these identities. These identities keep us in prison.
Very powerful. So Vimalasara, it's been a joy to listen to you and to be in conversation with you. I'd like to ask you for any final message you'd like to give our listeners.
It's been a pleasure just having this conversation with Nithya, and I just gratitude that I have gratitude that I can be here with you today having this conversation. And so my message is to have gratitude when you wake up in the morning. If there's one thing that you can have gratitude for, and I'm not saying grateful, because there's a lot. The word grateful can be quite loaded, but there's times when I have gratitude for being able to drink clean water. And when we have gratitude, that in itself can bring about happiness. So every day, to have gratitude for the breath, gratitude if you're in a place where you have clean water, gratitude for the breath. If you're alive, you can have gratitude for the breath. That's my message. And do join me on Round Glass. I have some courses on Round Glass, and I have some meditations on Round Glass. So do join me there. It'd be great to have you sit with me or join me on one of my live sessions too.
What I'm told is that you're one of the most popular teachers on Round Glass, so I'm sure people will enjoy your courses and your material and your meditations there. Thank you all for listening. Tune in next week for a brand new episode of Stories We Tell. Don't forget to rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're looking for new ways to explore conscious living, then please subscribe and join me on the Round Glass Living app. In addition to this podcast, you'll find courses, classes, recipes, music, and more to help you make positive changes while doing what you love. Until next time, I'm Nithya Shanti. Goodbye.
The Stories We Tell is brought to you by Round Glass, a place to find holistic well-being. With Round Glass, you can create your own customized wellness journey. Find more information at roundglass.com today.